All right, everyone. My name is James Holst. I'm with Norsk Lithium, and what I want to talk about in this breakout session is I want to give everybody the information they need to understand some of the changes that are taking place with battery technology. And in my opinion, the couple of the main things that are driving this forward is change in Sonar forward-facing transducers. So if that's being incorporated into the way you fish, lithium batteries, whether you're aware of it or not, they're in your future. Because as Sonar goes, you really can't accomplish what needs to be done without better batteries. So I'm just going to go into a checklist. Here's what I want to accomplish with this presentation. I'm James Holst with Norsk Lithium. That's Jacob Halls with Norsk as well. Jake handles logistics with the warehouse and customer service. If you were one of our customers and you had an issue, chances are you'd end up talking to that man if you just had a question. I'm going to focus on the pros and cons of the different battery technologies. This is not a Norsk sales presentation. If things work out well, I hope that Norsk gets mentioned very few times. I really want to talk about the technology behind why lithium is, the demand for lithium is propagating at such a rate. Questions are encouraged at any time. You don't have to wait. Just shout them out. It's a small group in here. I'm not going to be offended or thrown off my game at all, so just throw them out. And the goal by the end of this, I hope, at least on kind of like a surface level, you have an improved understanding of which battery is right for the way you fish, whether it be a starting battery or deep cycles, and you can choose the right chemistry. So and then at the very end, I'm going to share some lithium battery installation basics. I'm not going to get into wiring diagrams, those kind of things, just some do's and don'ts. So just a brief overview. We started in 2018. In lithium years, that's kind of like middle-aged, right? We're not brand new, but we weren't at the beginning by any means. So we've been around, this is our 6th year. Located in New Hope, Minnesota. That's a northwest suburb of Minneapolis. We were acquired by Seafoam November of 2022. Seafoam is a pretty popular engine treatment. If you've ever had a two-stroke that didn't run right, probably put some Seafoam in there, got you going. And we're really focused on innovation and technology. What we're not going to do is just kind of create generic batteries like everybody, like that you're going to find from other companies. We're really looking at addressing very specific uses with our products. And then what sets us apart now, advanced Bluetooth communication and the ability to support those batteries remotely. If you're having any kind of issue with the battery, you call up Jake. Jake can see what's going on with your battery anywhere in the country. As long as you're connected to it with your cell phone, Jake can go through our database and see what's going on with your battery. So enough about that. Let's talk about the pros and cons of lead acid versus AGM, and I really group them together. In my opinion, AGM is just like a more refined, slightly more robust, better engineered lead acid battery. So the pros are relatively inexpensive, although some of the higher end AGM batteries, guys, you're seeing that price point go way up as well. But for the most part, they're a lot less expensive than lithium. Compatible with most chargers. I haven't seen a battery charger in a long, long time that wasn't compatible with a lead acid battery. They're simple. There's not a lot going on there. I mentioned some advantages of lithium. Bluetooth, cloud diagnostics. Some people, there's just too much going on there, right? So lead acid is simple, it's basic, and for a lot of people it's worked for a long time. Works well in scenarios where battery will not be deeply discharged and then is followed up with an immediate recharge. That is so important. We're going to talk about that in detail. Now the cons, heavy, very low energy density. In the same space that we can use in a lithium battery, it would take 4 to 5 lead acid batteries to provide the same amount of energy. And of course the weight, when you start piling up 4 or 5 lead batteries to do the job of one lithium, you're really sinking that boat deep in the water, so to speak. Lack of built-in protections. What's simple about the lead acid battery is one of the downsides. You really don't know what's going on with it. You don't know the state of charge. You don't know the voltage unless you have, connections to it. You're not going to know if one cell or one plate is having an issue. So in that regard, if lithium is the smart version of batteries, the lead acid are kind of like the dumb version. No built-in diagnostics, low energy density, we talked about that. And here's kind of the driving force behind why lithium is really starting to supplant lead acid with a lot of anglers, and that's if you discharge a lead acid battery more than 50%, you're damaging it. How many knew that? Yes. Some know. So there's a story behind that, right? And I'll talk to guys who are like, what do you mean, man? I mean, my lead acid battery, I've had this as a starting battery in my boat for 6 years. That's a perfect scenario for lead acid battery. Turns over the motor, outboard starts, energy flows to the battery, brings it back up to full charge. Typically, I'll follow up and say, how many fish finders do you have connected to that battery? And that person will say, well, I've got one on the dash. How big is it? It's a 7-inch graph. Gotcha. That's the perfect use case for a lead acid battery. For guys that are putting a lot more draw accessories on that starting battery, that's where that battery is drawn down below 50% and where you start to run into some serious issues. So we'll talk about that more as we get deeper into this, but keep that 50% in mind. Lithium ion, high energy density, higher voltage. Higher voltage is important. We'll talk about that a lot here in a little bit. Longevity. Some of these batteries are warranted for 10 plus years. Cell quality is so good that most companies are warranting their products 3,000 plus discharge cycles. And to put that in perspective, out of all the anglers that fish for us as part of our pro staff, we looked into the database to see who had the most cycles last year. And this was a guy that was running 2-a-day trips out in Lake Erie. He had 66 cycles in 1 year. And what it takes to get to a cycle is you have to discharge 100% of the battery's capacity. So if you fish one day and you run that battery down 25%, you actually have to do that 4 days in a row. That equals 1 cycle. So when you read these various warranties about lithium batteries talking about how many cycles, that should put it in perspective that if they're talking about 3,000 cycles, that's the complete discharge from 100% all the way back down to 0 and recharged again. It's an incredible amount of energy delivered over its lifetime. Lead acid in comparison, you're probably in the range of 3, maybe 500 cycles before, and that's if you're using it correctly, not discharging it below 50%. So you can see that the longevity really favors lithium. And then on the lithium side, we've got the built-in protections. You're not going to be able to overcharge it. You're not going to be able to under-discharge it because there's a brain sitting on top of that battery. It's called the BMS, Battery Management System. And it really controls everything going on inside that battery. How much current it can deliver? How long can it deliver that high amount of current? Can it take a charge below this temperature? Will it operate at extremely warm temperatures? So it's kind of like having a guardian angel, making sure that the user isn't abusing that battery. Supports 100% depth of discharge. A lithium battery, a good one, is not adversely affected by discharging that lithium battery by 100%. So you don't have to play that 50% cutoff game with a lithium battery. It does not damage it in the least. It's faster recharging. So on a 100 amp hour battery, which would kind of be like your standard battery that would be used, 3 of them to create 36 volts for a trolling motor, you can charge a 100 amp hour battery with 50 amps of current. Typically the rule there is half of the capacity. And that's a huge advantage. If you put that much current in a lead acid battery, you'd boil it off, where a lithium battery loves that high charge current. One of the cons here, of course, is cost. These are not inexpensive, and they're investments. Something that's going to last 10 years probably needs to be treated like that, as an investment. They're not compatible with all chargers. In the last couple of years, if you've bought a new charger, you'll probably notice that there is a setting on almost all chargers to accommodate lithium batteries. Prior to that, it was kind of hit or miss. There's a lot of really good lithium battery chargers out there now that just do a great job of handling the lithium chemistry. And so one of the cons is it's a newer technology. I'm a 50-year-old male. I don't like change. It's real, right? People will resist change. So they get comfortable with lead acid. They don't want to change. I respect that because to some degree, I'm the same way. And then they will not charge below 32 degrees, or they shouldn't be charged below 32 degrees. The BMS should stop that charge from taking place. If it doesn't, what ends up happening is you can permanently, severely damage your battery. So most of the time, if the BMS is set up correctly, You try to start a charge when the temperature's below 32 degrees, the battery doesn't take a charge. One of our best sales days every year is following a bass or walleye tournament on the Great Lakes in late March or April. A lot of the guys will run out. They don't have batteries that can be charged below zero. We have a battery that has heated elements inside the battery that uses the inbound current from the charger, warms it up nice and gentle, charge takes place, you're good to go. So those tournaments run up to Sturgeon Bay, Green Bay, gets cold overnight, batteries don't charge. They give that man a call because they want to know, why do yours work when it's cold? Mine didn't. So in this case, unless you purchase batteries that have that ability, it's a major con if you fish in colder periods of the year. Early in the spring walleyes, late in the fall muskies, that can definitely be a drawback if you're just getting into lithium batteries for the first time. So what's driving the demand? Really you think about how fishing has changed. 5 years ago, I'm just going to speak for myself, my boat looked completely differently than it does now. I had a couple 10-inch crafts on the dash. I had one on the bow, 2D Sonar. Everything was run to my starting battery, and it worked. It was not an issue. My current boat has four 13-inch Humminbird Apex units, a Garmin 12-inch live scope Mega 360, so you can see where this is going. How anglers are fishing, how they choose to fish, has changed so much that it's outpaced what lead-acid batteries can possibly do. They were never designed to provide, I've got some numbers here. I kind of did the math in my head. My boat of 5 years ago was drawing less than 5 amps. Everything on, probably had the radio on too. Now it's over 15 amps. There's no way for a lead-acid battery that's functioning as your starting battery, running live wells and aerators, to provide more than 3 or 4 hours of runtime before it's completely dead. So you've kind of broke the 50% rule. You're damaging that battery. You're really working it hard, and that's why you talk to guys that fish hard, they fish off, and they fish long days. Lead-acid batteries, they're lucky to get a second season out of them, and that's why. What we're asking from those batteries is so different from what we asked of batteries 5 years ago. And it really is coming down to larger screens and forward-facing sonar. And I know there's mixed feelings on those technologies. Usually end up talking to somebody off the stage after one of these presentations. They're like, man, I'll never use that stuff, and that's fine. But most anglers are headed in that direction, myself included. I personally love it. And the screens are only going to get bigger. And the power demands from forward-facing sonar are only going to be increasing. Talk to the Garmin guys, talk to the Humminbird guys. They only think bigger, brighter, bolder, and that takes power. So we're not going back, or at least I'm not. I don't talk to very many people that are investing in new boats where they're going, no, I tried the 12-inch screens and I'm going to go back to 7s. I've not run into very many of those people. So that's why lithium batteries have really taken off the way they have. It's not because people woke up one morning and said, I want to spend a whole heck of a lot more on batteries. It's because the batteries they were using just could not provide the power they needed to fish the way they wanted to fish. So another huge advantage to lithium batteries is they function, they output a higher voltage. And why that matters is if you look at the operating voltage range for electronics, the bottom end is about 10 volts. Garmin, Humminbird, Lowrance. The top end is right around 18. A couple of the manufacturers will actually take more than that, but that's what they state. So when you've got a lead acid battery that's been used for any amount of time, 15 minutes, half hour, with any kind of draw, it's down below 12 volts. So you're within a couple of volts of the shut-off voltage for that unit already. And so the way engineers have described it to me, it's like that piece of electronics is starving. It wants more voltage, but lead acid can't give it. Now, lithium starts at a much higher voltage, and the discharge curve is essentially flat. Until you get to that last 5-10%, 13.3, 13.4, 13.5, 13.6, it does not drop off a cliff like lead acid does. I've done lots of experiments. New Group 27 battery, you put a 5 amp draw on it, within about 30 minutes, you're below 12 volts. So you're already within 2 volts of shut off for these units. So that's where you're seeing guys really see a difference in quality, image quality, clarity, less interference, because those sonar modules, those transducers, are getting the voltage they need to operate efficiently. And the other big advantage is just by operating or by outputting that higher voltage, you're seeing about a 20% longer runtime. So if you have two batteries, 100 amp hours of output, one's a 12 volt lead acid, the other is a lithium battery. 100 amp hour one side, 100 amp hour the other, just by running at a higher voltage, you're gonna see about a 20% longer runtime, which that's what people wanna see out of these batteries. They're struggling with runtime, so they invest in lithium. Lithium gives them a better image, gives them a better picture, more clarity, and longer runtime. So it's really, other than cost, people have identified that this is a better mousetrap. It's going to do for them what they want to do. So we talked about monitoring. What is smart about these batteries? All lithium batteries, to my knowledge, that I've ever run across from any manufacturer, they have some degree of Bluetooth connectivity. You're going to be able to see state of charge, voltage down to the cell level. You're going to be able to monitor the health of that battery. When one of our batteries starts up and you connect to the app actually runs it through a set of diagnostic checks to make sure everything is functioning the way it's supposed to function. Compare that with a lead acid battery where you just kind of hope it's going to work. It either does or it doesn't. If it doesn't work, it's time to replace it. These lithium batteries with the connectivity, you can diagnose just about any issue you're having, right down to loose connections, blown fuses, bad battery charger, with that type of connection, that type of monitoring. So here, this screen here just kind of runs you through some of the things that you're going to see in a real good app, right? Connect to multiple batteries simultaneously. Instead of just looking at one battery and knowing the state of charge or knowing how much charge you have left, a good app's going to aggregate that information from all three batteries, and you're going to know how much runtime you have on your 36 volt system. It'll tell you, at this setting on my trolling motor, I've got 8 hours and 15 minutes, which is really useful. You can name your batteries, and people are like, you know what, Bob, Harry? No, front, middle, back. Right? And the reason that's important is you blow a fuse, we've all been there, digging around the bottom of a boat, pulling fuses, pull this one out, pull this one out, pull this one out, checking. If you name your batteries, and in the app it tells you that battery middle, you're not getting a connection. You just look for those fuses. So it saves you a lot of time. It really narrows down troubleshooting. And then if you can't figure it out, you call somebody like Jake. Jake can actually plug the charger in. He can see the amount of current that's going to each battery in that group. So diagnose a lot of bad chargers, don't you? Very, very useful. We can't get your fishing spots. That information is not communicated to us. But as far as being able to get people back out on the water, get through battery problems, what would you say? 9 out of 10 people that call? Yep. Mm-hmm. As long as that person's connected to the app, give Jake a call. We can see what the app is saying. So he can be in Minnesota, you can be here in Florida, connect to the app, and Jake will just he can see everything. He can see if there's a low amp discharge. He can see if one bank is not receiving current from the charger, or he can see that the voltage going to that bank is lower. A transformer in one of your banks is going out. And then typically swap leads, you know the game, right? One battery's not charged, swap leads. Oh, yeah, that's a problem. I got proper voltage to that battery now. So I mean, I talk to mechanics, riggers all the time at boat dealerships. If they could solve two things, battery problems and water and fuel. I can't help you with the water and the fuel, but this is a better mousetrap when it comes to keeping boats on the water, solving problems that, really simple stuff, because most of them are. But if somebody isn't really mechanically inclined, they can stump people. In a really good app, integrated FAQs and troubleshooting guide. If our app pops a warning, it doesn't just say, hey, there's something wrong. It gives you a link to a video or the user manual to the right section to help you fix it, so you're not left out in the cold. Monitors charging status, obviously. It'll even go so far as it'll tell you if a charge has been interrupted. Yeah, I got your boat plugged into the garage, kid runs by later, trips over the cord. You walk through the garage again, it'll ping your phone, it'll notify you charge was interrupted. Go figure it out. We can't plug it back in for you, but we can let you know that your batteries didn't top off. Power cycle counter, that's the charge cycle counter. When you think about warranties on batteries, lead acid is typically done by months. Well, lithium batteries do it by charge cycles. And this actually counts it for you. You can pull it up at any time. You're able to monitor and know if you had a really good season out there on the water, or if you need to get out on the water next year a little bit more, because the numbers were a little low. And then custom notifications. There's some things that we can do with our app where you can set, anybody here have one of those powered stow and deploy trolling motors? You ever had it hang where it didn't come back up out of how much fun is that? So you can set, most everybody down here is Ultrex. Pull the handle, up it comes. These powered deploy trolling motors, if you run your batteries too low, they're supposed to come up into the cradle before the batteries go dead. They're not very good at that. So then you have to disassemble the trolling motor to get it out of the water. It never happens at a good time. You can, into our app, go and say at 15% capacity, I want you to text me and let me know that, hey, my day's just about done. If the fish are biting, you can keep fishing, but you don't have anybody to blame at that point other than yourself, because the bite was too good, you didn't go home. And the other one that we really like that customers use for a lot is kayak. It's essentially kayak mode. You set the notification for 50%. Guys that run trolling motors on kayaks, you should know when you're at 50%, so you got as much power to get back as you use to drive away from the landing. The proactive diagnostics and warranty, we've talked about that a little bit with what Jake can do to kind of help walk you through, but then you register the batteries for warranty right through the app. You install the app, install the batteries, open the app, each battery, it's going to say warranty it. Register it right now. It does it right through the app. You don't have to worry about sending in cards or those kinds of things. It's just done right through use of the app. So we're going to just talk about installation basics here. Very simple. I've included this bullet point here. May be mounted in any position except for upside down. That's been tried. It's a really bad idea. It's a really bad idea. I don't know why they did it, but they did. Standard battery trays and straps. Group 27 lithium battery fits in a Group 27 lead acid tray. So they're very similar from an installation and wiring standpoint. Here's one very important. Never, ever, ever mix chemistries when you connect one battery to the next. And the reason is, if you've got a lead acid starting battery and you have a lithium house battery and you connect them together, the lithium battery is going to try to charge the lead acid battery essentially in perpetuity. It's living at a higher voltage. And the flow with two connected batteries is, let's try to get even, right? So that can never actually be accomplished, and you're going to create so much heat, one or both of those batteries is going to burn up. So you can have a lithium house battery with an AGM or lead acid starting battery. You need to put a battery isolator in between them. So that's a very important one. We run into this one, not a lot, but every once in a while we'll talk to a guy who's like, hey, I put those batteries together and I got warnings in the app. How do you have them wired? Well, I got them connected together. One of the biggest mistakes you can make. Yep. Series is a non-issue, because when you wire batteries in series, they don't try to self-balance each other, right? The mistake people will make when they have batteries in series is they'll use one battery as a 12-volt power source. They'll pull capacity off that battery. So if you have 100 amps, but during the day you pull 30 amps off one battery, you've essentially pulled 30 amps off of all three of them. Because as soon as that middle battery hits zero, you don't have 36 volts anymore, you got 24. So the system, that's why we would never recommend tapping into 12 volt that way, because you're essentially doing a 3x draw of power for the convenience of kind of not doing it right. And then parallel is the one where they self-balance. There's two different lithium battery types that really should concern or that people should be aware of. You have lithium starting batteries. This is a really hot topic. Currently, there is only one motor manufacturer that has put out specs for what they're looking for from a lithium battery to be compatible, to adhere to warranty requirements. That's Mercury. Mercury has spelled it out very carefully. Other companies, Yamaha, Suzuki, Honda, as of yet, have basically just kind of sat on the sidelines. I think they're kind of waiting for things to shake out. The reason I bring this up is starting batteries that meet Mercury's warranty requirements do a phenomenal job of starting outboards. However, batteries that are not labeled as starting batteries should never be used to start an outboard because they're very different animals. The cells are different. The way the BMS is set up is very different. One of the key differences is in let's say a deep cycle lithium battery, the charger will bring that battery up to 14.6 volts and the BMS will shut off. That's how it's intended to work. Stop me from overcharging. In a starting battery, the alternator outputs 14.5 volts, plus or minus 0.3 of a volt. And very often what you'll see is that voltage at the battery will climb above 14.6 volts. If that was to happen, if you were to connect a non-starting battery to an outboard and you got to 14.6 volts coming off the alternator, that BMS shuts off the battery and that current has nowhere to go. What ends up happening then is, they call it a high voltage transient. With nowhere for that current to go into the battery, it goes flying through all the attached accessories in your boat. And you can, fish finders, sonars, they'll just shut off. They protect themselves pretty well. Shallow water anchors, downriggers, I've heard of some stereos being damaged. So the key point to take away, starting batteries, you can use those to start outboards or as a deep cycle, but a deep cycle lithium battery should only be used to power things like trolling motors, bait pumps, stereo, what have you. Just don't use it as a starting battery. All right, so those are kind of the basics to help a guy understand, or gal, understand what they should be looking for or thinking about when you're picking a battery type. If you're running a bay boat, saltwater, inshore, and you're not running extensive electronics, you're not going to have any issues with draw killing off a lead acid battery used to start your outboard, right? You start adding 2 or 3 screens to it, now you've got a problem. So it's not that lead acid is going to permanently just disappear and die. You're going to see people making very select decisions about where they're going to use each one of these chemistries. And it really so much in freshwater with guys really going to the 12+ inch screens, the forward-facing sonar. That's where the growth in lithium is coming from. So it really is necessity is driving this.